Good morning, students. Today's lecture is on Industrial Dispersal Policy for BA2 Public Administration students, Semester 4 of Paper 2, Industrial Administration in India. This is part 1 of the lecture and it includes industrial dispersal as per the industrial policies till 1980. Industrial dispersal as per the Industrial Policy 1991 is in the part 2 of the lecture. The PPT has been prepared by Dr. Vibha Sharma, Associate Professor and Head, Department of Public Administration, MCM DAV College, Chandigarh. Objectives. The main objectives of this lecture is to make the students aware of historical evolution of industrial dispersal policy during the pre-independence and post-independence era, development of industrial policy, which includes the constitutional provisions and as per Industrial Policy 1948, 1956, 1973, 1977 and 1980. In order to understand the dispersal policy, we need to understand the historical evolution. The location of industrial activities is to a large extent the result of a long process of historical evolution. Origin of modern industry in India lie in the middle of the 19th century when the first cotton mills were started and the first railway line laid down. The subsequent evolution of the sector led to a locational pattern whose distortions are evident to this day. An understanding of this evolution is necessary. Let us now discuss the situation during pre-independence period. 18th century. It is widely believed that India was one of the premier manufacturing nations of the 18th century. Manufacturing activity was essentially artisan-based. It is only in the middle 19th century that modern factory-based industry came to India, leading to a decline in traditional manufacturing. New towns like Bombay, Ahmedabad and Calcutta emerged as industrial hubs, thereby changing the locational pattern of manufacturing. 19th century. Bulk of the development in the mining and factory sector took place in the manufacture of cotton textiles, jute and coal mining. Most of this development took place in Bombay and Bengal. Out of the 144 cotton mills in existence in 1894-95, 100 were in Bombay Presidency, and of these, 67 were in Bombay City and Island. However, in quantitative terms, the extent of development was limited and took place mostly in the older centers of the industry. The pace of industrial development increased around the Second World War in the new industries like rubber, petroleum, chemicals and engineering. In the period up to independence, employment in modern industry grew rapidly in a few pockets, whereas employment in traditional manufacturing declined slowly. This decline was due to competition from imports and modern manufacturers, as well as due to the decline of feudalism, which deprived many traditional industries of patronage. The overall impact of decline led to stagnation and decline in the level of employment in sectors like foodstuff, cotton textiles, wood products, and leather. The growth of new types of industries in the field of chemical and engineering also took place largely in or near Bombay, Calcutta, etc. In this slide, we will discuss the constraints of the market at that point of time. The smallness of the domestic market imposed constraints. In a closed economy, the size of the industrial sector is a function of agricultural productivity. Agriculture has to be capable of producing surplus food and raw materials consumed in the industrial sector. There was a lack of investment climate, absence of entrepreneurship, and lack of any strong pressure group to lobby for tariff protection and other forms of governmental intervention. Variations in entrepreneurship also underlie regional imbalances in location, that is, the development of indigenous industry in Bombay and Gujarat and its failure to develop in other parts of the country. Other reasons included lack of development of the banking institutions, distortions in the transport infrastructure. With regard to transport infrastructure, its impact on regional distribution of industry was mixed, as though it facilitated the growth of export-oriented raw material-intensive industries in the backward area, but also made it easier for goods from outside to come into the area and compete with the local manufacturers. Post-independence spirit. The pattern of location of industrial activity was also dependent on deliberate public intervention besides the market forces. The need to correct imbalance in the pattern of industrial location was recognized by the government. The first 5-year plan promoted greater attention to the development of the backward states and the regions. The need to correct regional imbalance was also recognized in the Industrial Policy Resolution of 1956 and the plan documents. The instruments used to influence the location of activity included location of public sector enterprises. That is, public sector enterprises were set up in the backward areas so that other smaller industry could go and set itself up in those areas, thereby developing the area industrially. The second was industrial licensing, subsidies, infrastructural development. These were the means through which the private industry could also go and set up industry in a backward area. The tendency towards locational concentration continued, and the share of the major industrial centers of Greater Bombay, Calcutta, including Howrah, Madras, Delhi, Ahmedabad, and Bangalore, in manufacturing employment rose from 9.6% in 1951 to 12.9% in 1971. By 1971, certain new industrial centers like Bhopal, Ludhiana, Jalandhar, and the new steel towns emerged. Relative importance of the second level, certain centers like Delhi, Hyderabad, Bangalore too increased substantially. A certain measure of industrial dispersal was thus achieved. Small industries based on the first stage processing of agricultural raw material were located near the sources of raw material. For example, crops like sugarcane The sugarcane processing units were located in those areas where sugarcane was cultivated and is being cultivated. Similar is the case of oil seeds. The location of small, medium, and large industries were determined largely by the location of markets, geographical spread of entrepreneurship, and availability of infrastructural and support services like power, electricity, transport networks, raw material and supply systems, etc. Industries also preferred industrially developed centers. The imbalances in the industrial development emerged due to failure to follow through the planned strategy of the second five-year plan. The second five-year plan had two components. One was the development of basic industries and the second was promotion of labor-intensive consumer goods industries in the village, cottage and small-scale sector. Achievements in the case of the first component were substantial, but in the case of the second component, limited success was achieved. Of industrial dispersal policy. As per the Constitution of India, the responsibility for the regulation of industrial development is shared between the centre and the states. The central government has a crucial and overall responsibility in the regulation and development of industry so as to achieve national objectives. The relevant entries in the 7th schedule are as follows. Union List or List 1, Number 7. Industries declared by Parliament by law to be necessary for the purposes of defence and for the prosecution of war. Union List, List 1, Number 52. Industries the control of which by the Union is declared by Parliament by law to be expedient in the public interest. State List, that is List 2, Number 24. Industries subject to the provision of entries 7 and 52 in the Union List. Now let's discuss the industrial dispersal policy through the industrial policy resolutions. In 1948, the government introduced the first industrial policy resolution. It outlined the approach to industrial growth and development. It emphasized the importance of increasing production and equitable distribution. The industrial policy carried no direct reference to the problem of industrial development of the backward areas. Industrial Policy Resolution of 1956. State to progressively assume a predominant and direct responsibility for setting up new industrial undertakings and for developing transport facilities. The lack of industries in different parts of the country is due to the lack of availability of raw materials or other natural resources as per this policy resolution. There was concentration of industries in certain areas due to ready availability of power, water supply, and transport facilities. Aims of national planning was to make facilities readily available in the areas that were lagging behind industrially and in providing employment opportunities. To raise standards of living by emphasizing on the provisions of infrastructure in industrially less developed areas was under the objective of Industrial Policy Resolution of 1956. Now I'll discuss the Industrial Policy Resolution 1973, 77 and 80. 1973. The industrial policy statement drawn in 1973 permitted large industries to start operations in rural and backward areas to develop those areas and to enable the growth of small industries. In the statement of the industrial policy issued in 1977, the government attached great importance to balanced regional development of the entire country, basically to reduce disparities in levels of development between different regions. Most of the industrial development since independence has been concentrated around the metropolitan areas and large cities. Rapid deterioration of living conditions has been seen, especially for the working classes in the largest cities, and attendant problems of slums and environmental pollution. The government decided to restrict licensing and financial assistance to new industrial units within certain limits of large metropolitan cities having a population more than 1 million and urban areas with a population of more than 5 lakh as per the 1971 census. Dear students, we have come to the end of part 1 of the lecture on industrial dispersal policy. Thank you.